And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 187. Today we're going to be looking at the cup challenge. So last week I was talking about the idea of how you can photograph pretty much anything if you understand the notion of light, narrative and various rules of composition. And following that, set a challenge to photograph something as mundane as a mug and make it interesting. So that's what today's about. I'll also be giving you an update on the Smug Points leaderboard and telling you what's coming up over the next couple of weeks on the run up to the 4th anniversary edition of these podcasts. So stick around. So yes, welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. We happen to be, right now, this moment, we are live on YouTube. So if you happen to be watching this live, then leave me a comment. Tell me where you are. Tell me what the weather's doing. Tell me something interesting. And if you don't happen to be watching live, but you're watching the recorded version, you can still leave a comment as well. You won't get the live instant response to it, but generally speaking, I am informed when a comment turns up. But if you find something interesting or you'd like to follow up something further, then do feel leave a comment. For that matter, make sure you, if you want to subscribe, but also click the like down here. YouTube does the algorithms do quite like it if you can click the like button, so that always helps too. I can see we've got a few people in already. So Jack was the first one in to say hello, everyone. April says hello, everyone, from a mild, mostly cloudy Long Island, New York. Oh, she's going to have difficulty sticking around for long until the UK clocks change. Yes, that's a point. In the US and North America in general, I think the clocks have gone forward an hour, but the UK doesn't go forward for another 2 weeks yet. And that means next week, which will be the 24th, we will still be this hour difference between, hour extra difference between UK and North America. But then the following week, on the 31st, we will have caught up, or you will have caught up, or somebody will have caught up. We'll be back in sync in the way that we have been for most of the winter. So yes, by the 31st, so in 2 weeks' time, we'll be back to normal with that. For Viji in India, I'm not entirely sure. You don't do daylight saving change, it just means that everything turns up an hour earlier, I think. So it's a 4.5 hour difference rather than a 5.5 hour difference. What else we got? Oh, Gareth says, hi all from a sunny Wales. Meg says, good afternoon, everyone. Susan says, hello from a very dreich Kakubri. Not sure it warrants a hot chocolate, but I'm having one anyway. Any weather warrants a hot chocolate, doesn't it? I love a hot chocolate on a nice sunny day and a dreich day too. Robert says, howdy all from a very wet Texas. And howdy, Robert. And happy birthday to Robert for yesterday. Yes, Facebook tells me it was your birthday yesterday, so I hope you had a good one. Viji says, good evening from Chennai, having a wonderful dinner and getting ready to watch the podcast. Nadia says, hello from a very dreich Fife. Yes, yeah, for those of you who aren't based in Scotland or aren't aware of your Scotticisms, dreich is a word which basically means dull, wet, miserable. Basically, it's what it sounds like. It's dreich, and it's a very good word for describing the weather currently here in southwest of Scotland, and obviously up in Fife as well. What else do we have? It's actually said, if you've not heard the expression dreich, I'm sure clear. So whereabouts are we? Jack says, is Kim having trouble? Not having trouble. Hopefully you've managed to tune in. Bobby Lumber says hello from Warrington. Welcome, Bobby. Thank you for joining us. John says, good day. It's sun is out here in Ohio. April says, the sun's just come out. Unpredictable weather. Marilyn says, hello from a chilly Colorado, recovering from a storm with multiple feet of snow. Gosh, there's a bit of a difference then. Okay, Susan did stutter a bit. Okay, not quite sure what's going on there. A couple of people saying happy birthday to Robert there for yesterday. Robert says thank you for the birthday wishes. Sorry we didn't didn't accept the cup challenge this time. Hopefully we'll be into the next one. Okay, right, so yes, welcome all. So yes, a little bit of a catch up there. So yes, last week was a real kind of back to, well, rather 2 weeks ago. It wasn't last week because we didn't have one last week. That's right. So 2 weeks ago. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend going back and watching episode 186, because in that we talk through the idea of how you can take almost anything and make it interesting. There's a notion here with photography, right at the core of photography, that a photograph isn't about what something looks like, it's about what something looks like as a photograph. Okay, and that's not necessarily the same thing. And that sentence is both really obvious and really profound at the same time. And it's worth just kind of constantly saying it to yourself and reminding yourself that when you look through the camera, what you're trying to do is create an interesting photograph, not just record the event in front of you. Even if you are recording the event in front of you, you're still looking for a way of doing it in an interesting way. So, with that in mind, I set the cup challenge, and we've had about 14 entries or so. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the entries, we're going to take a look at them, and hopefully at the end of it, we will all feel a bit inspired, so that even if you didn't take part, it might make you think, well, okay, could I just photograph a cup or a mug that's sitting around the house, or anything else? When if you did take part, and you get a chance to see how other people have approached the same thing. And part of what I love about photography, and what I love about this community, and what I love about it all in general, is the fact that we all see things in a slightly different way. No two brains are exactly alike. Even identical twins have different brain patterns and different experiences, and what you are chasing when you have that camera in front of you is going to be different for each person. So even if you all had exactly the same cameras with exactly the same equipment and exactly the same editing stuff, I set you a challenge, you all approach it in a completely different way. And that for me is absolutely wonderful. So let's make a start then. Oh no, before I get to that, Smug Points update. Yes, so Smug Points leaderboard. Well, for March, because we didn't do last week, we only had one 2 weeks ago, and I had something. Janet was the only one who'd put in. Basically, it means that Janet's currently on 30 Smug Points for March, and everybody else is either on 5 or 0. So you get 5 for just turning up and leaving a comment and saying hello. You get 25 if you submit an image for feedback. You get 10 points if you submitted a photo for the challenge. If you come up with an idea for a podcast, which I will use, then you will also get 25 Smug Points, I think. And if you invite a friend along who then says, hey, yes, I'm here and I'm now part of the community and joining in, and so-and-so invited me, I'll give them an extra 30 or give you who's done the inviting an extra 30 Smug Points too. So basically the Smug Points are all about your engagement, your involvement, how much you take part, your participation in these podcasts, because these podcasts are for you. Apart from the odd person who wants to buy me a coffee, I don't get paid. I'm not sponsored for this. I'm not getting paid for doing this. This idea is that we've got a community here to help build your photography. It's not just about me, it's about you. And the more you participate, the more you contribute, the bigger and more fun these podcasts become. So the Smug Points is by way of trying to encourage that. Another part of this is the quarterly. So every 3 months or so, I'm running the Smug Points. Those who have the most Smug Points at the end of 3 months will get to choose the podcast. We can do a podcast dedicated specifically to that person. So whether it's a particular topic, whether it's particular images, you want to send me a bunch of images, and we will focus specifically on your sticking points, the bits that you would most like to find out, develop with your photography. We will drill down on that. So that's the grand prize. Now, currently, in our top runners for the quarterly now, because at the end of this month, in 2 weeks' time, we'll then accumulate all the points. I'll get them to see who's got that. Currently, at the top of the leaderboard is Janet with 160 points. Viji running close with 145, Susan just behind with 140. So with only 20 points between the top three, everything's still to play for. April's on 125, and Marilyn, Robert and Jack are all somewhere between about 100 and 110. So actually, it's still definitely all to play for. We've still got 2 more podcasts after this, plus the points that are accumulated from this one to see who's going to win that quarter and what's going to happen next with that. So that's going to be a bit of fun. Janet's here now, says just made it, stopped on my way home from shooting sunrise. And yeah, Susan's hoping we can see some of those sunrises images. Right, okay, so oh yeah, one other thing then is it happens to be St. Patrick's Day today for anyone who happens to believe in saints, or anybody who is Irish, or is anybody who is of Irish descent, or anyone who likes an excuse for a pint of Guinness. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Right, okay, with all that lot out of the way, let's make a start. Let me dig out, where did I put that folder? Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're now going to go through the images that people have submitted. And so this was the cup challenge. Can you take a photo of a cup and make something interesting out of it, either from the composition, the lighting, the story, something like that, and we'll see what happens. And so our first entry here is April. These aren't all necessarily alphabetical, but you know, this one happened to be the first up that I got. So this one from April then, we've got is, you know, a good cup. So it's got a little bit of rule of thirds, we've got a nice angle on it, got the pattern of the cup with the little butterfly on it and the kind of little grassland scene underneath. But it's got tea in it, but it's also got a slice of lemon. And April says, this is my entry for the cup challenge. I had so many choices to choose from, but I decided on my teacup and saucer with tea filled in it and a lemon floating on top. And I thought this is probably quite a good start to a cup challenge. It's what we kind of think of when we think of like a photographing a cup or a cup of tea. Certainly, and a slice of lemon floating on it. You've managed to get the focal point, so the focus is actually onto the lemon, which is just the right kind of place to have it. Everything else drops out of focus slightly, so your eye gets drawn to that. The fact that the lemon is brighter than the tea surrounding it, and then you've got it kind of also draws your attention to the lemon floating on top of the tea. I think what you have to think of here is, if the lemon was missing, would it work quite as well? And no, I don't think it would. So nice that I think that works well with the lemon. So thanks for sending that one in. So 10 smug points for sending an image in. So that's the way we're going to do this, is everybody who sent an image in automatically gets 10 smug points added to the leaderboard. Right. So so next up then we will go to Nadia. Yes, so this one from Nadia. So Nadia says, my entry in the cup challenge was about experimenting with a flash and a fast shutter to freeze the sugar. I had two obstacles. One was keeping the background dark, and two was catching the falling sugar. I ended up playing with the f-stop in order to keep the background dark, as I needed the shutter speed to freeze the sugar. So I ended up with timings with the sugar falling off the spoon to get the picture. And I think it's a lovely photo here, Nadia, and quite a challenge. And I really respect the fact that you've gone for the challenge here. This is not an easy shot to try and get. To be able to properly freeze the sugar, you've got to go for quite a high shutter speed. So you've got a flash going off as well. You've got to, you are going to have to play around with the aperture, because interestingly, what happens is when the flash go off, when you play around with the, your temptation is to, well, you play with a high shutter speed. The high shutter speed actually won't make a lot of difference. There's quite a bit of leeway where you can move the shutter speed, and it makes no difference whatsoever, because it's the brightness of the flash which is freezing the sugar. So really, if you're wanting to adjust the brightness and the darkness of this, if you're ever doing these kind of shots, it's the aperture which is going to give you, which is going to show up either more or less of the background. So the narrower you make your aperture, the less light is going to get in. The wider the aperture, the more ambient light you're going to get in. So in this case, I don't know what your actual settings were for this, Nadia, but Nadia's going to have gone for a more narrow kind of, and while we can see that the focus is nicely on here, although the cut behind is slightly out of focus, it's not as out of focus. So I would imagine probably something like maybe an f8 or an f11 or something like that. But beautifully freezing the thing. I like the notion of the second cup as well. You know, you could just as easily have done the sugar tumbling into the single cup, but this second cup here really makes a difference. It's sort of, you're creating an echo. We've then got the the notion that there's two cups, that the sugar's falling into one, gives you a sense of thirds. We've got a good diagonal between the two of them. You're also rather nicely, I think, creating we've talked about the idea of containment, because the handle of the cup on the right here, as your eye comes down, curves you back into it, but also the little bit of handle here, just catching the light, curves you back into that. And that little bit of white against the dark, light against the dark. So a really lovely combination of shadows, composition, good use of black and white, I think, capturing the sugar. All in all, and the challenge of trying to do that isn't one of these things that's easily done. So, yeah, smug points to you there, Nadia. I think this is a great shot. So, thank you for sending that one in. John says, I really like Nadia's shot. Kudos to her. Susan says, love this in black and white. Very effective. April says, it looks better with the second cup. Gareth says, the light reflecting off the second handle is brilliant. And Viji's wishing belated happy birthday wishes to Robert. Right, okay, so let's move on then. So next entry is from Marilyn in that one. Here we go. So Marilyn says, this is for the cup challenge. After multiple compositions, I thought my husband's crossword would be a fun addition to the scene. And yes, in the US, some in the US put the tea bag directly in the mug. Well, yes, I mean that actually happens a lot in the UK too. There is this idea that we all sit around in the UK just making tea into a pot and all the rest of it, and some people do, and it's still lovely when you do, but most of us are rushing about. We grab the tea bag, we throw it in the mug and add the water. So yes, you've swiped your husband's crossword. At least it's full. When I first saw this, I thought, well, actually, what if he hadn't completed it yet and you just swiped your, how to annoy the husband. No, I'll grab your crossword here, but I was doing that. Yes. So it's kind of fun still life here that Marilyn's created. So we've got the mug with the tea bag. We've got the English tea caddy sitting in the back here. We've got the crossword, little diagonals going from the teaspoon this way, echoing with the pencil this way, the chair at the back there, also kind of creating it. So there's a nice sort of sense of containment here within the composition. So yes, that idea of a still life, which is about the idea of sitting down with tea and crossword. So yeah, fun addition there, Marilyn. Thank you for sending that one in. All right, Nadia's just for her coming back to her settings. It was a 200th of a second was for capturing the sugar there, and it was an f6.3. So that's, if you want to have a go at doing something like that yourself, that's a good starting point. Now, obviously, what you do will maybe do, depending on, you're not going to have exactly the same setup, but if you're wondering where do I start, that's as good a place to start as anywhere. 200th of a second, f6.3. Go click, see what happens, and at that point you can start adjusting your aperture or shutter speed according to how that works. Okay, April says, nice still life, Marilyn, and Viji says, good one. Are they tea bags in the box? And the crossword is a nice touch. Yes, I would imagine it probably is tea bags in the box. Although Marilyn may want to come in and correct me on that. Right, okay, so next up then, let's move over to Jack. So Jack says, this is my entry for the cup's still life, an old cup reflecting on a mirror and lit from the lower left of the frame. I tried other angles, but all others gave too much reflection from the mirror and wanted to concentrate on the flower on the cup. So that's great. Yeah, so what Jack's done here is he's introduced the idea of a mirror. So it's not just you've got the cup, you've got the berries tumbling out of it, you've got the napkin. But the mirror then has also created an extra layer here. So we've got this reflection going on. And as soon as we introduce reflective surfaces, where the light comes from becomes ultra important. It's not just about lighting it up, it's about how the reflection is going to be lit and whether the light is then going to end up bouncing off the reflection and into the camera. So this kind of thing takes a lot of experimentation. You don't just sort of plonk it down and go click and then walk away again 30 seconds later. Much like Nadia's, a lot of thought and effort and playing around goes into it. And I must admit, I'm really pleased with this. All the ones that we've seen so far, and all the ones that were to come yet, have required a lot of thought. Everybody's really put some energy and effort into this, and I'm really pleased about that. And I think it pays off. Interesting thing here, we've got the spoon. We can see the back of the spoon here. But actually the reflection in that has got this kind of rather interesting flower pattern going on the inside of the spoon as well, which I quite like, which is that's one of the great things about reflective surfaces. If you can play with them in such a way that you can have something that you can see in the mirror or reflected surface that you can't necessarily see directly from the angle of the camera if the reflective surface wasn't there. And that allows you to sometimes really get in and play with extra little details, which is one of those things which it kind of gets lost if people are scrolling too fast. But if you've got a picture where anybody's going to spend a little bit of time with it, sometimes having these little almost hidden Easter eggs is a little bit of fun. My only thought with this, Jack, although generally speaking I'm not giving too much critique, is the top of the cup here feels very, very close to the edge. I might have just given it a fraction more of a little bit of room to breathe. But having said that, you know, I suppose you've given the same amount of space to the top as you have to the berries at the bottom. So it's, yeah. But other than that, no, fun shot. And thank you for sending that one in, Jack. Right. Where are they? Oh yeah, John says Marilyn has a good shot as well. And Nadia and Viji are saying cheerio to April. He's got to leave early. Meg says, I really love the diagonal of the red berries. It works well on the gorgeous colours. Excellent. Right, okay, next up then we're going to go to Janet. Now, Janet was also playing with a mirror, but she decided to go abstract with this. It's only a small picture here. It would have been nice to have slightly larger, but it doesn't really matter. I think I'll just zoom in slightly. I don't think it's compromising the picture. But yes, so for here, she's also used a reflective surface, but has cropped in. So this has just become kind of abstract shapes as such. And I like that approach. I think that was really quite inventive. We can see, you know, you think about the fact that it's a cup challenge, so obviously then that's the corner of the cup and that's the handle. So we know what it is we're looking at. But it takes you a moment to kind of think about it. And it's a nice contrast between black and white. And so it's about line and shape and light and the kind of playing around with the abstract forms. So, and I like the fact that you've gone for that. I think it's quite inventive, Janet. Yeah, so thank you for sending that one. And again, it's this notion of inspiration, you know, if play around, you know, so like Jack's gone for the one with also using the reflective surface, and it shows you the difference between if you zoom in or you zoom out and how you might kind of, the difference that makes. That's not necessarily to say that one is necessarily better than another, other than on the individual photo that you're doing, but it's always worth playing around. And it's part of when I was saying last week the idea that ideally what I wanted you to do was take at least half a dozen different kinds of photos and then choose the best one to send in. Because really, if you're trying to develop your photography, then you need to kind of break free of thinking that there's one way of doing things. Start with your best guess. By all means, you know, do a setup, take a photo and go, that's okay. And even if it works, even if it turns out it's a great photo and you're really pleased with it, say, what else could I do now that I've got this here? What happens if I change the angle? What happens if I change the lighting? What happens if I, you know, change my depth of focus? What happens if I focus, clear in and zoom in on different aspects of it? You know, how can I change any aspect to this particular photo? Let alone, you know, if it's about a cup, what if this cup happens to be sitting on a table? What happens if the same cup happens to be sitting on a draining board? Or what happens if it happens to be sitting in the garden? Take any idea but don't stop at that. Just immediately try and brainstorm and shift it about. And that's how we develop our eye with photography. So, yes, thank you for sending that one in, Janet. Jack says, thank you. Viji says, wow, interesting perspective. Susan says, I really like the abstract photography, and this works really well, Janet. And Janet says, thanks. Okay. Next on then, we'll move to Stacy. So Stacy sent in this one and says, this is my cup challenge photo. I took several, and I like the pot behind and the blur of the stove top with reflections. I took it from an angle on the level. Hopefully you approve. And yeah, so this again, this is great. This is this idea of getting in and playing around with your angles and saying, well, okay, what am I going to do? So you've got the cup on the stove, got the kettle behind it, got the stove dials and what have you set further back behind that. And you decided to come down low rather than at a 45-degree angle. Or, you know, another option here is if you're looking directly above, where you would then have the circles of the stove. But I'm sure you probably played around with that. So that notion of playing around, I think, is quite good. One of the slides, I'm not quite sure what's happened up here. This has the look of an edit that hasn't quite worked, right? So that's one of the things you have to be slightly careful of. Go in, edit your photo. These photos are not about necessarily truth-telling, they are storytelling. So if you happen to have some kind of mark on here that you're wanting to remove, by all means remove it. But if you are editing, you also have to be careful with the edit that the edit doesn't become part of the feature. And so if I'm looking at this but I'm noticing that, it's immediately taken me away from what it is I'm supposed to be looking at. But yeah, fun for the photo, just be slightly careful with the details. But thanks very much for sending that one in, Stacy. Right, okay, so next up then I'm going to go to Marie. So a quick late entry from Marie, but she said, here I torched a marshmallow to flame so that it looked like lava. And I thought this was a lot of fun. You know, I quite like this idea. We can see the flame, the torch flame coming in, hitting a marshmallow, presumably on a hot chocolate or something similar, and flame is coming up, it's starting to melt and getting that glow coming up, and it's a very different idea to what you would generally think of as a cup challenge. Fine, we might have a hot chocolate with a marshmallow floating on it, but setting fire to it, I think, was certainly a bit of fun. And I quite like the contrast again between the blue flame of the torch and the orange of the marshmallow going up as well. So a nice brightly colourful creation, this one. So thanks very much for sending this one in, Marie. What have we got here? Oh, Viji said she loved the kettle colour and the shape contrast. The colours look good with Stacy's photo there, and then Viji's put a big smiley emoji there for torching the marshmallow. Susan says, wow, Marie, looks a bit dangerous to me. Great shot. Yeah, I don't know whether I'd risk that. I wouldn't risk it on my favourite mug, I think. I'd risk it on a cup that I thought it doesn't really matter if it shatters. But yeah, a bit of fun there. Maybe something to try out at some point. And Gareth says a hot chocolate. Yes, yes, I guess it is with that. So yeah, okay. So that's kind of moving through, about halfway through already. So we've still got about another half dozen or so images to go through, and then I'll tell you about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you stick around. In the meantime, if you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, and you would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. And of course, don't forget to invite your friends along, and let's keep growing this wonderful community of ours. Right, okay, where are we next? Susan. Yes, so Susan sent in this wonderful picture. Says, I attach my submission for the Cups and Mugs challenge. Challenge it was indeed. You asked us to take 6 images and choose our best. I took 55 and found it very difficult to choose. Brilliant. Yes, and I think that's just part, you know, being the photographer is just where you kind of get carried away. But yes, the choosing is also a part of it. Learning to curate your work, selecting which one you're going to use is just as important as taking the photos as well. And she goes on, that's my indecisive nature. Now, I ask myself, did I choose this one because of its sentimental value or because I like it? Bit of both, perhaps. How difficult it is to remove ourselves from being overly sentimental and view an image for its photographic qualities alone. And that's an interesting point there, which is very often we get caught up in the emotional content of a picture if that content has an emotional resonance with us, and it can sometimes make it quite difficult to separate out if that emotional resonance isn't likely to be there for somebody else. Are they going to like it? I mean, Susan goes on here. This is an image of my 1960s Wedgewood Susie Cooper coffee set. I do actually own the full set, handed down from my godmother some 60 years ago, now gathering dust in the attic. I placed it in a light box and focused the light on the cup. I chose an aperture of f2.8 in order to throw the milk jug and sugar bowl out of focus and have a low ISO. I did make a few minor adjustments in Photoshop and crop the image to remove some negative space. Note, no border. I noticed there was no border from you, Susan. Well done, you. I'm really looking forward to seeing the other submissions in your challenge. P.S. Now I've decided I really like the coffee set and have brought it out of storage in order to use it. And I love that idea as well. So this set here, so there's an emotional connection because it was given by Susan's godmother. Then there's the notion that it is a Susie Cooper coffee set. Now, I have to confess, in my complete ignorance of the world, that didn't overly mean anything to me. The moment my wife Maggie saw it, she went, oh yes, Susie Cooper, that's a thing. And I'm, okay, that's a thing, good. So to my wife, she recognises that, so that adds an extra layer to her viewing of it. And part of this then comes down to, one of the things that come back to quite often with photography, which is the success, in quotes, of a photograph quite often is dependent on who happens to be looking at it. So we know that you can put the same photo into a competition with the same kind of title, but with a different judge, you might score highly with one and low with another. But also, you know, is it being judged on by Joe Public? Is it one of these sites where everybody's scrolling through at high speed? Is it in a frame on a wall in a gallery where people are taking time over it? So depending on who's looking at it and the context in which it is being seen makes a difference as to how it is going to be received. Your personal emotional connection to it then, if this is for a vintage crockery set, if this is for a Susie Cooper competition, then this is going to have much more of a resonance with the viewers. If this was in something like PhotoCrowd, Guru Shots, ViewBug, it's kind of online people's crowd voting sites, then it's going to be judged far more likely. It will just be judged on the quick thing. Oh, it's a cup, and there's a bit of biscuit, and there's a bit of jug, and it looks like it's been well taken. And so, but it will be a very fast judgment rather than kind of. So yeah, it's always a tricky one. Try to separate yourself out from the emotional content. You know, we take a photo of our grandchild. We love this photo because it's our grandchild. Somebody else might not react to it so well because they would find a picture of their grandchild a much better one. So yeah, it is a difficult one to separate out yourself. Best where you can, you just try and think, well, okay, if I wasn't emotionally connected to this grandchild or this coffee set or anything like that, how would it be viewed? Not always easy to do. But yes, thank you for sending that one in, Susan. And interesting that, yes, sparking that bit of discussion as well. Viji says, very beautiful. Meg says, fantastic, Susan. I think you're very clever to put the biscuit on the diagonal on the plate. Yeah, that's true. It's kind of having a nice kind of, adds to the sense of composition there. Right, okay. So then, on to Meg then. So my daughter Meg was very keen to get a picture in, and was taking photos all over the place, with trying different angles and different cups and different places. And she said, "Hi Dad, I did the challenge with my pens in 2 mugs, with the light coming from the window and the blue bottles." So yeah, these blue bottles and green jugs and what have you, sitting on the vases, or sitting on the back of the window there. You can see it's still still winter in our garden, not snow winter, but although there is that tiny, I will let you know, that tiny little yellow blob there, that is a daffodil. We do have signs of spring. So Meg here, so this was fun. Meg's, what happens with sets of mugs, sometimes you've got too many mugs already that you're using. What do you do with other mugs? And they get stored with pens. Meg's actually been going through, we've now got a bin full of pens that she was trying out and realised were no longer working as well. So yeah, a little bit of fun. Meg trying to make sure that there's enough light. Some of the other photos I know she was taking, the house, it was too dark in the house, and so the pictures, because Meg's only got a phone camera, they were just ending up kind of too noisy to use. So getting them over by the window, get plenty of light, is certainly one of the ways you can do it. And then in this case, we've got the 2 mugs, and we're mixing it up a bit with some coloured bottles as well. So yeah, fun wee shoot there. So thanks Meg for sending that one in. Viji says, Meg, I didn't even think of using the mug for pens. Yeah, I think it's sort of, it feels like that sometimes I think most rooms in this house have got a mug somewhere, or some kind of device which have got a bunch of pens or pencils sitting around, sticking out of them. And Susan says, those blue bottles are gorgeous, Meg. Right, okay. Next up, we then have Robert from Texas. Not Robert whose birthday it was yesterday, but new Robert Schaefer, who's joined us about a month or 2 ago. And Robert says, this is probably my favourite coffee cup. The Arcade is this is from Scott. The Arcade, established in 1919 in Memphis. It says the Arcade is a classic cafe and diner in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. It's owned and operated by the family of dear friends, and has been since it was opened in 19. Okay, so same family, so for the 4th or possibly even 5th generation then. My friend who I met in high school and ran the restaurant for probably 20 years, passed away about 1.5 years ago. Sorry to hear that, Robert. Anyway, it snowed in Dallas, Texas, where I now live, and I thought the red coffee cup with a touch of coffee showing at the top would look great out in the snow on our deck. So this is what it looked like. The obstacles I had to overcome were probably the cold and getting the cup out there without my footprints showing up in the image. I also think I was working on some minimalist shots at the time as well. So yeah, this is fun. I like this idea. So a bright red cup, and a completely white background, just the snow, enough little texture in the snow. We can see the crystals around the base here just before it sort of all melts. So if the coffee was hot, not sure how hot the coffee was, just enough little to know that there is actually coffee in the mug as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of fun. What might have been interesting with this, Robert, I think maybe slightly more coffee, just bring it, and if you've managed to get it hot so there was a little bit of steam rising out of it, might have added just an extra touch. But that having said that, I think it's a nice kind of minimalist thing. It's a statement. It's a red against the white, and it's there, it's a sort of quite a sort of bold photo, really. You're not worrying about anything else. It's the mug. So if you're talking about a cup challenge, then you have a cup and going that minimalist way around it. So yeah, excellent. Thanks very much for sending that one in, Robert. Right. Susan says, love a bit of minimalism, Robert. Great idea. Viji says, snow and red catches the eye. Gareth says, stands out fantastically. John says, nice contrast and some simplicity on Robert's shot. Right. Okay. So next up then we have Andrea. So I think this is the first one Andrea has sent in to us. And Andrea says, I wanted to convey that I can't wait for summer to sit in the garden with a lovely cup of tea. So yeah, we've got a rather nice little kind of still life idea. We've got a beautiful little cup with a flower on. We've got flowers around it. Something here. This looks like an old camera looking from the top, or something very similar, with flowers around it. So a nice sense of soft pastel colours, but right next to the window. So unlike with Jack's photo, or was it? Yes, it was Jack's photo. He had a reflective surface underneath, similar with Janet. Andrea here has gone straightforwardly for the use of the window. And so we've got the window, we've got the reflections of the curtain. We've also something else outside. Is that part of the wall outside, or is that part of the wall inside being reflected? But that notion of sitting next to the window and a kind of an almost yearning. You know, you've got the cup by the window, you'd be looking out the window, waiting for summer to arrive. So I quite like the story and the idea of that. And I think the composition works quite well with this reflection. So we've got the reflection, or the double reflection that you get with double glazing, with a reflection and a half kind of thing, really. But rather than it being a kind of flat on, it's diagonally we've got that lovely diagonal going sort of right through the middle of the picture, which kind of, I think, enhances the sense of composition. So nice one there, Andrea. Thank you for sending that one in. Viji says, painterly, a perfect still life shot. And Susan says, great soft reflection there, Andrea. Right, okay. Next up, then, well, we'll go to Viji. Now, here we go. So Viji actually posted 4 entirely different pictures into the Facebook group. Just a quick reminder there that there is a Facebook group also called Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. For anybody who hasn't joined it yet, it's do please go join it if you do Facebook. If you don't do Facebook, that's okay. But it's one of the places where you can stick images in, or ask extra questions, or put in ideas for for podcast ideas, challenges, ideas, anything, or any questions you have about photography. If you don't do Facebook, you can actually just email me directly. It's again worth just saying, here's my email, here's my web address, kimayres.co.uk, and if you just put Kim at in front of that, so Kim at kimayres.co.uk, you can email me directly with images you want to put in for content challenges, or you want feedback on, or if you have any questions or suggestions for podcast themes, anything like that. So back to Viji. So anyway, although she put 4 pictures in, it was really about showing the fact that she'd been going at things for trying very different styles of photography. But I had said, but we only submit the one, and Viji said, but this was the one that she wanted to put in. So she says that this Korg, double O, Korg. There's going to be something in the pronunciation. Depends on your accent. I've probably got entirely the wrong accent for this. Anyway, apparently this cup is made of coffee beans, which is quite impressive. I didn't even know you could get a cup made of coffee beans, but I suppose why not, really. The smoke you see is not from the coffee. There's an incense stick behind the mug. Oh, that's kind of clever, that. And the shallow depth of focus there, everything else is kind of moving out of focus, and smoke, just enough the smoke coming and then curling off. So you can't see an incense stick kicking about. So my favourite cup is this one. It was prepped and then taken with my DSLR. Thinking the focus could be better, although I think the focus probably is in the right place here. You've got it on the logo. But we've got enough of that smoke just coming out there. It's a very kind of a very atmospheric shot. I think the black and white probably works really well for this as well. Now I will, although I did say one only, and I was only going to put this one up, I will actually just show you another one, because I thought it was kind of fun. Viji did put this one in. This one won't be giving her any extra smug points because we only had one to commit. But as she said, this one, the quirky one with the gold cup, is a decorative terracotta piece at a coffee shop. I saw the painting on the wall and positioned the cup as if the painting was taking a sip. And I thought this was kind of fun. It is just perfectly lined up here. And what I like here is the notion of the opportunist side of it. You're sitting in a coffee, you suddenly realise that there's potential here. So you sort of get down, you get lower, you move the cup about. But there's also the idea of, I mean, it might be partly getting to take a sip, but also being slightly out of focus. It's almost like the steam and smoke or whatever coming up out of the coffee around it as well. And then you've got enough this little bit here. It says start with coffee, kicking into the logo up there. So I thought this was a fun one as well, worth showing. I like the fact that you've really been kind of your approach with this, but as has been for everybody who's put the shots in so far, is that there are, the thought has gone into it, that it's not just being a quick, oh, there's a coffee, take a quick snap. There has been some thought about going into what angles we're going to do, what lighting we're going to do, what can we do to make this a more interesting image. So anyway, thank you for sending that one in, Viji. Right, okay, so where are we? Susan says, great light here, Viji. Looks good in black and white too. And Nadia says, I like the gold cup one, Viji. Okay, so next on then to John. Now, having just said about the fact that you don't take a quick snapshot of a cup, this does look like a quick snapshot of a cup, but it was fun. Of course, there's been thought gone into it, and it did make me laugh. John says this has to get at least one smug point. I was brainstorming on how to do this, then it hit me. Raw photo needs brightening a bit, I think. Advert for Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. What a great podcast. I approve the fact that you're getting ready to watch this one. It's a bit of fun. It put a smile on my face. Nice brightly coloured mug too. Not a lot more to say about it. It does kind of sort of do what it says. But yes, it kind of made me laugh. So thank you for sending that one. And I suppose sometimes it's a case of, even if it's not necessarily photographically the most best of interesting light and composition and use of diagonals and all the rest of it, sometimes just the content, if something does actually put a smile on your face, is worth playing around with. So yes, thank you for that. Right, okay, so next up then I will go to Gareth. So Gareth in Wales has sent in this one and says, I've been watching your channel for a while and it's not often I get to do your challenges, so I thought I would give this one a go. This is a coffee cup spilling the beans to an old grinder. I've enhanced the beans and the body of the grinder slightly as they were a little too dark against the background, adding light with a small touch from the lower section. Touch, or would that be a torch? Could be a torch with a slight misspelling there. From the lower section to bring the cup in more light. And so yeah, this the good idea. It's a good still life photo. This, we've got the cup, we've got the coffee beans spilling out, we've got the coffee grinder in the background, soft dark lights, and yes, you would have to kind of probably play around in the editing a little bit to sort of bring little bits more out of the shadow and what have you. But it's a kind of, and the warm, you've got all the warmth of the warm browns and the yellow light, just that little hint of the kind of cooler greys on the mug, which sort of offset it and stop it becoming overly kind of brown. So a nice thought, and also that getting down low. So we're kind of level with the cup, but we're actually slightly under the handle of the grinder as well. So it's a very kind of intimate shot. We're right in there with it. The rest of the world doesn't matter. We're just down here in this place. So fun composition, I think, is well executed. And again, it's that kind of thing where you're going to be taking your time, working out, playing around with the angle of the mug, how far out the beans are coming, moving the torchlight backwards and forwards until you've kind of got what you want. And it's the best kind of thing, and it's what I was really hoping to see with these challenges, was this notion of people giving that level of thought into the composition. So nice one there, Gareth. Really kind of enjoyed seeing that one. So there we go. That then, what have we got? Meg says, fantastic, John. Nadia says, lovely shot, John. Viji says, oh, absolutely great shot. Loving the coffee grinds. Right, so that brings us to an end for the pictures. So don't rush off just yet. I'll tell you all what's coming up next week. But thank you very much to everybody who sent in the images. I'm sure you'll all agree that there's been some fantastically well thought out photos here, and hopefully this giving you all some ideas of either how you might approach such a challenge again. Under different circumstances, or for a new challenge, or how you might approach anything. Don't forget. I mean, many of you here are on things like Photo Crowd and Guru Shots and what have you. And sometimes we can kind of feel a little bit stuck. So when you see how somebody else does something, take the inspiration. What could you be doing? With uses of reflections, of angles, of lights, of compositions, of arrangements of objects, of the uses of torches or flashes or fast shutter speeds or reflections in windows or any of these kind of things, that everybody's come at this with a really kind of creative way. And I'm really impressed. So 10 smug points to everybody who's entered. However, on top of the 10 smug points, we have my pick, really. So the presenter's pick. So I had to thinking about this for a little while. What was I going to go for? So now where was that? One sec. I seem to have lost where I put my smug points. And right, okay, yes. So where are we? So Susan is my top award here, getting the 30 smug points for this one. For this one here. It is beautifully done. It is beautifully lit. It is nicely. As compositions go, I think she's absolutely kind of. Got it on board there. So 30 points there to Susan for this one. Next up, I think my 20 points are going to go to Robert for this. I thought this was again, it's fun, that notion of minimalism, and just it's there. It's very simple, but at the same time takes a little bit of thoughts, placing it there. It's a strong, bold image. And then third up, we've got Nadia. That was it, Nadia. Yes, I love this one. So this is a great shot. I really like this one. The thought that's gone into it, so yes, definitely needed to be in my top 3 with this. So that's kind of how I've done that one. But I've also got a couple of extra little commendations, I think. So I think I'm going to give an extra 5 points to Janet for this one. I really like the abstract notion of it. I also want to give I'll give an extra 5 points to Viji for this one. Again, it's really kind of moody, atmospheric, and what the heck, I'm going to give 5 points to John. Just it is not the best photograph on a technical level, but it did make me laugh, and so it put the smile on my face, which is always worth something. So extra 5 points for each of you for that. So I will go away then and top up these and add them to the ongoing Smug Points leaderboard. Now, okay. So congratulations to everybody for extra points for that. So what I'm going to do now is, so next week, now some of you, if you're on Facebook, may have seen that I currently have a small exhibition going on in a wee village called Money Ive, which is up into the hills about 20 miles from here. And on display, I've got some photos which I previously had printed up of Ballet Dancer, and they are stripped back. They are black and white images. They are outline, edge lighting images, and so I think I have talked about them once before, but we are going back probably about 3 years plus when I did. So I wonder, the fact that the exhibition is on, I think I might have mentioned it in the Facebook group, or you can find mention of it certainly on my Kim Ayres photography Facebook page as well, if you want to go and check. So I think it was Andy who asked me about these images. Was there a place to see them or anything like that? And I thought, well, okay, I'll talk a bit about them on the podcast. I thought, because there's an interesting kind of approach. I'll give you a bit of backstory about it and talk about that. So that's next week. There will also be slot for maybe 2 or more, certainly no more than 3, but I'll have to think about it to see what the timing is. But certainly slot for 2 for feedback. So if any of you out there would like some feedback on a specific photo, then make sure you either put it into the Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres Facebook group, or email it to me, kim@kimayres.co.uk, and tell me about the photo, tell me what your sticking point is, and I will do my best to help you. There's very few places on the internet where you can get genuine feedback on your photos, certainly without having to pay for it, so make the most of that. And don't forget, there's Smug Points there available to people who are contributing images for feedback, because when I give you the feedback for your photo, everybody else who's watching also gets deeper insights which they can apply for their own photography as well. So that's for next week. Now, in 3 weeks' time, it's the 4th anniversary of these podcasts. Can you believe it? 4 years since I began these podcasts. Just into April, lockdown, COVID, all that kind of stuff going on 4 years ago. Who would have thought 4 years later I would still be doing these podcasts? Now, those of you who've been around long enough know that my favourite genre of photography is portraiture. The hardest form of portraiture is self-portraiture. So in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to be having a self-portrait challenge, but I'm not going to just throw it out there and leave it. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to do a podcast specifically about self-portraiture. I'm going to talk about ways you can go about it, kind of things you need to keep in consideration. I know that self-portraiture is one of the hardest of all the kinds of photography, because on 2 levels. First of all, there's the technical. How do you take a photo of yourself when you're not actually behind the when the camera's supposed to be pointing at you rather than you being behind the camera pointing it at something else? And then emotionally, exactly the same thing. Most photographers I know would far rather be behind the camera than in front of it. So there's both an emotional and a technical challenge to it, which is what makes it the most difficult. But it's also, I think it's where you really get challenged as a photographer, and so there will be extra Smug Points available to anybody who decides that they're going to enter that. But because that's in 3 weeks' time, in 2 weeks' time I will talk much more about that, and then next week I will be talking about the those Ballet Dancer photos. Right, okay. Susan's already gone. Self-portraits, no. Right, okay, so that basically brings us to the end. Thank you ever so much to everybody who sent in their images. Where am I going here? I need to do that, and I need to do that. And yes, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.